So, I just hit 39 years old. When I was 18, I met my ex Marisol. At that time, I was mixed up with the Latin Kings gang. I'd been in that crew since I was 13, always getting into trouble. Marisol, on the other hand, was all about church. My grandma used to drag me to Sunday Mass, and when I saw Marisol for the first time, it was like love at first sight. I asked my cousin, who was friends with her, to introduce us, but he said no. He didn't want me getting mixed up with her, thinking I might get into trouble. Yo, have you ever met someone who made you want to be a better person just by being around them? She was that person for me. When I found out she went to church almost every day, I started hanging around the church steps and talking to her. I even started walking her to and from church. She made me feel like I mattered, you know. Eventually, we started dating and it was amazing. For a year and a half, I left the gang life behind, got my GED, started going to church regularly, and started thinking about my future. But then, I got it. So, I was just minding my own business at the store when I ran into someone I used to have beef with. They started talking smack, but I tried to brush it off. I swear, I just let them yap and I walked away. But then they went and stabbed me in the shoulder, and I just lost it. I ended up beating them up, got arrested, and suddenly it felt like all my hard work to turn my life around was for nothing. Marisol was pissed at me, my grandma kept bringing up my old screw-ups, and my cousin was all like, I told you so. Thankfully, my reputation in public was still intact. My lawyer saw that I was really trying to change my life, and somehow convinced the judge to let me out of jail after a month, even though he was still mad at me. Marisol came to see me almost every day after I got out. A month later, I found out I was gonna be a dad, and I didn't want my kid to grow up without a dad because I was either dead or in jail. So, we decided to get married and I started going to trade school to learn how to fix cars. I worked my butt off for my future family. When Luna was born, it was one of the best moments of my life. Man, those were some tough times in my life. Marisol had a double hysterectomy and was in the hospital for months. Luna became my whole world. I was dead set on giving her the best life and everything she could ever want. When Marisol finally got out of the hospital, I swore to her that our daughter would have a better life than we did. And for years, I kept that promise. I saved up enough money to move us to the suburbs and buy a house. Can you believe it? I even became a Girl Scout leader. I made sure Luna went to a private school. My school taught me self-defense and tried to be the perfect husband. I never really knew my parents and didn't have a good male role model in my life, so I looked to TV dads for how a healthy relationship should be. I copied their behavior and the marriages I saw on TV. Over the years, I started my own garage, my cousin became a pastor, my grandmother stayed a pain, and my relationship with my wife got better. I made sure to stay in shape like I did in prison, but Luna started to. I can't stand it. When my girl turned 13, she started pushing me away, giving me attitude when I showed her love, and acting like I didn't exist when I asked about her day. It hurt, and Marisol picked up on it. She told me Luna was just being a typical teenager and advised me to be patient. She promised Luna would come back around. But it went on for 2 years. So when it was time for a quinceañera, I went all out. I granted her every wish, but she still acted disrespectful. I felt like my old self was about to come out and set her straight, but instead, I was talking to my cousin about how stressed I am about being a good dad. He told me to give my daughter some space and even said a prayer for me. I wanted to put together a slideshow for the father-daughter dance, so I gathered a bunch of old pictures of us. But then I realized we didn't have any recent ones because she didn't want to take any. The last time we got a picture together was on her 13th birthday, and those pics are on her busted tablet. I took it to a repair shop, no matter the price, because I needed it fixed. After a whole day and $300, the tech finally fixed it. I knew her code, but I never snooped on her. I just wanted those pics. When I checked out the tablet's gallery, there they were, pics of my little girl looking all happy and smiling with me. It made me so damn happy. But then I saw the texts between my daughter and my wife. It was a long convo where Luna didn't want to dance with me, and it stung when my wife brushed it off as just teenage stuff. But Luna's words really got to me. She asked why she I had to do the father-daughter dance with Luna, even though I'm not her dad. My heart stopped, I got dizzy, my mouth went dry, and I needed to sit down. My wife said that I raised Luna and loved her, so that made me her dad. But Luna insisted that my cousin was her real dad and couldn't wait until she turned 18 to spill the beans and go live with him. She straight up told me she hated me and thanked God I wasn't actually her father. Marisol got pissed off, wishing my cousin hadn't spilled the beans to Luna 2 years ago. Man, as they were going at it, I was getting more and more pissed off. My wife had been lying to me for 15 freaking years. And to top it off, my own cousin, the guy I trusted and spilled my guts to about Luna and my fears of being a crappy dad, had totally betrayed me by letting me raise his kid. I was feeling a crazy mix of anger, sadness, and heartbreak. I just wanted to let it all out, scream, cry, and disappear all at once, if that even makes any sense. I was in a dark place, man. To stop myself from doing something dumb, I made up some excuse to Marisol about needing to focus on work so I could pay for Luna's stuff. But really, I just drove off. So, I was in Manhattan and ran into my old lawyer, you know, the one who used to be just a regular attorney but now he's all fancy with his own fancy firm in Midtown East. I was kinda shocked that he remembered me, but then again, I was his first client back in the day. I spilled all the beans to him, handed over the tablet, and when he switched it on, messages just kept flooding in. Turns out Luna was talking to my cousin, who happens to be her real dad. He was actually encouraging her to give me another shot. She mentioned how both of us had been there for her, and she even called him Poppy a bunch of times during their talk. He called her his little girl, and we talked about our choices. He kept asking me what I wanted to do, and I told him I wanted to go all in and do whatever it takes. I planned to really shake things up, and he agreed with me multiple times. I also made it clear that everything had to be sorted out before the end of the month, in 2 weeks. We spent the next 12 hours going over what needed to be done, and I followed his directions carefully. I quietly put my business up for sale and let the private school know that I wouldn't be paying for the next term. Last year I closed up my college accounts and got ready to put my house up for sale online. I followed his advice perfectly, except for one thing: the day of the party arrived. It all went smoothly, with the whole family there and Luna having a blast. Marisol kept checking on me and I lied to her. It was hard to lie to her, since I've never lied to her since we first met. Over those 2 weeks, every time I kissed her, held her, or made love to her, it was tough not to show my frustration or resentment towards her for knowingly allowing it. Having to raise my cousin's kid wasn't easy, especially since he was like a brother to me. He was even the godfather of my child, my best man at our secret wedding, and my confidant. So you can imagine how hard it was for me to keep my cool during the father-daughter dance. I called Luna to the dance floor. She looked annoyed but went along with it. The music started playing and she smiled. That smile broke my heart. I had missed seeing that smile for so long, but now I didn't want it. As we danced, I felt. Okay, so I had this slideshow playing with pics of us, right? And then at the end of the song, I showed screenshots of her texts with her mom and dad. It didn't go down too well. Marisol freaked out like she saw a ghost, Luna was just staring at the screen, and my cousin was looking at me like he was scared shitless. Marisol came running to me trying to explain, but I told her I already filed for divorce and she could explain it in court. She was begging me, grabbing my arm and shit, but I just pulled away. I turned to Luna and said, "Let's talk." I busted my butt to give her everything, but she didn't appreciate it. I started to walk away, but not before warning my cousin that I'd knock him out every time I saw him. And you know what? I actually did knock him out. The fallout was intense. Marisol and Luna ended up crashing at my grandma's place. Her family was totally appalled and wanted nothing to do with her. Her dad even apologized to me, even though I'm not sure why, since he never liked me, despite all the good changes I've made. So, this dude used to hate my guts, but now I'm Mr. Perfect husband and dad. Just a few days ago, I was a total loser. Then, my grandma had the nerve to bring up this story about Abraham coming back from war to find his wife with a baby that definitely wasn't his, but he still raised it as his own. She basically told me to be more like Abraham. I was so pissed, I told her to get out of my house. Then Marisol showed up a few days later, crying her eyes out the moment she saw me, saying what went down was all a misunderstanding. So, there was this whole mess when I got arrested and my girl was super mad at me. My cousin was there trying to comfort her and somehow they ended up hooking up. It only happened once and she's been faithful to me ever since. She even offered to take a lie detector test to prove she's telling the truth. But then I asked her how long she knew that Luna wasn't my kid, and the way she looked at me all teary-eyed, I knew she knew from the start. I told her to get out, but she suggested we try counseling instead, saying I was blowing things out of proportion and we could work through it. So, she thought I was Luna's dad even after that whole mess. I lost my cool and ended up yelling, "Get over it," like a dozen times at the top of my lungs while throwing her stuff out the door. I called her a lying 4003 and said I never wanted to see her again. I made it clear that the life I had built was no longer hers before physically pushing her out the door. A few weeks passed and she kept blowing up my phone, but Luna never tried to contact me. Marisol was totally surprised when she found out I sold my business. She was even more shocked to learn I was hosting an open house. She came in all worked up, yelling at the people to get out of her house and begging me to get help. She said I was destroying our marriage and had no right to sell the home where we raised our kid. I told her this house was full of lies, where I raised someone else's kid. I said I'd give her half when I sold it and told her to leave before I called the cops. It was just a threat, all she had to do was go. Basically, all I had to do was act like the victim and she would have gotten me arrested. But she eventually gave in. Then my cousin came to talk to me and I punched him, dragged him outside, and slammed the door. I said no to mediation, even though Marisol wanted to make things right. I was dead set on getting a divorce. My lawyer filed for a quickie divorce and before I knew it, we were at the Nassau County Courthouse in just 3 months. During that time, I kept to myself. I've heard some real horror stories about the court system, especially when it comes to divorce, but I didn't back down. So, get this, I had this lady judge who was actually super fair. My lawyer was on top of things from the start. Marisol's lawyer tried to dig up dirt from my past when I used to be in a gang, acting like it made me a bad husband and dad. But my lawyer shut that down real quick and the judge even scolded Marisol's lawyer for trying to shame me for turning my life around. My lawyer presented all the evidence and suggested a one-time alimony payment based on certain conditions. Marisol was bugging me about selling the house and business, but I just brushed her off. She eventually gave in when she saw I wouldn't budge. But then things got crazy when it came to child support. My lawyer showed all the texts between Luna and Marisol, proving Luna knew I wasn't her real dad and was excited to be with her biological father. It was a real shocker. So, when Marisol found out about this revelation, she was totally shocked. Then my lawyer filed a motion to take my name off Luna's birth certificate, get rid of any connection to her, and release me from paying child support because everyone agreed that my cousin was actually her dad. Marisol was shocked by all of this and started yelling at me, begging me not to go through with it. She kept saying that I was Luna's dad because I had been the one raising her. It's pretty sad to admit, but if she hadn't acted like that towards me, maybe I would have been on board. There were times when I wanted to fix things, but then I'd see Luna's texts to her friends, her real parents, and I'd remember why I needed to stay strong. I still don't know what hurts more, being lied to by the woman I thought was my soulmate, or being tossed aside by the child I worked so hard to give everything to. The judge just stayed quiet. Man, I spent a lot of time going through all those text messages, but finally she agreed that I'm not responsible for Luna financially and my name can be taken off legally. My lawyer also asked the courts to make my cousin pay child support and filed a lawsuit to get back all the money I spent on raising Luna, like private schools, dance classes, Girl Scouts, horseback lessons, and everything else I put into that kid. I told the judge that my cousin was being a total scammer by letting me take care of his daughter without helping out financially. It was a stretch, but the judge actually agreed. I didn't even look at Marisol when the judge made her ruling. I didn't care about what she was saying as I walked out of the courthouse. Her crying and excuses didn't faze me anymore. A few weeks later, my ex called me shocked that I stopped paying for Luna's fancy private school. I told her to hit up her baby daddy before hanging up, even though Luna hit me up for the first time since this whole mess and was crying about being scared to go back to her old school in the hood. She wanted us to be a fam again. I told her to talk to a real dad, the one she really wanted, for advice. I got a bit loud with her and reminded her that she's known the truth for years, and she even said she was thankful for it. Someone like me wasn't her real dad, even though I changed a lot since finding out I was gonna be a father. I cut ties with her after that and even considered ending my life a few times. I even thought about getting back at my cousin, but instead I made him pay me back. He had to give me $500,000, which was rightfully mine since my ex agreed to the lump sum. I didn't care that the money came from the church, I was too hurt emotionally. Soon after, I left New York and moved to Idaho, as far away from New York as I could get. So, I randomly picked a state and city and just bounced. Started a new business, bought a house, but man, for 2 years I was dealing with major trust issues. I ended up going to therapy, anger management, even hit up some rage rooms. It was a tough time, but eventually I found myself back at church. And get this, that's where I met my fiancée, Jocelyn. She's freaking awesome, just turned 30 when we met and we hit it off right away. I opened up to her about everything that went down and my ongoing trust issues. Man, she was so understanding and supportive. A year later, she dropped the bomb on me that I was gonna be a dad and suggested we get a DNA test just to calm my nerves. I had totally forgotten what it felt like to be happy, but when my son was born, I was just blown away with joy. I finally called up my grandma after years of not talking, and she started crying. I told her about my son, and she was all like, "You gotta come to New York so I can meet my great-grandbaby." She laid on the guilt trip real thick, saying she's 90 years old and wants to see me one last time. Yep, we decided to fly to New York, rent a car, and head to Bushwick. The thing that bothered me about the neighborhood was how everyone seemed to know your business. My grandma got to meet my son and my fiancé, and she made a little jab in Spanish about her being white. I just nodded along politely. We had some touristy stuff planned for the week since it was Jocelyn's first time in the Big Apple. I wanted to make it special, but things never go as planned. To my surprise, my ex-wife yelled my name from downstairs. I looked out the window and was shocked by how much weight she had gained. My grandma, speaking in Spanish, told me to go talk to her and Jocelyn agreed. I went downstairs and there was an awkward silence before the anger started coming back. Marisol said I looked good, but she said she looked awful. She told me she missed me and she said she hadn't been with anyone else since the divorce, but I didn't believe her. She had the nerve to tell me I was a grandpa, and I gave her a doubtful look. Turns out Luna hooked up with a good guy and got pregnant at 18. Her baby daddy joined the Marines to take care of them, while her biological dad wanted nothing to do with her, just paying child support without acknowledging her. He's no longer a pastor, now working at the bank down the street. She said Luna named the baby after me and I just couldn't handle it. Marisol wanted me to stick around, but I couldn't do it. I just walked away and went back to my grandma's place. Luckily, I didn't have to explain anything to Jocelyn, she just got it. In the elevator, I told her all about it and she comforted me, saying everything would be okay. Marisol looked shocked and jealous as we left, eyeing my fiancé. Jocelyn didn't miss a beat and introduced my son to her as if she was the other woman. She said, "I would like you to meet his biological child." It felt like a stab in the heart, but she understood my pain. Marisol kept trying to stop me from leaving, saying that Luna felt bad and Jocelyn wanted me to make things right. But I was too mad. I got in the car, ignoring Marisol's pleas. Jocelyn encouraged me to give an olive branch, so I gave Marisol my number for Luna to call me and then I drove off. I was stopped at a red light when I spotted my cousin at the food stand. Something just snapped in me and I got out of the car, walked up to him, and started a fight. Jocelyn was yelling at me to stop, but when I looked into my cousin's eyes, I could see the fear. I ended up spitting on him and then took off. Now I'm back home, trying to balance work, being a dad, and being a good fiancé to my girl. But ever since that incident, whenever I'm alone, all that anger comes rushing back. Luna even sent me a text with a pic of her smiling with her son. She said sorry for what she did, but I can't figure out if she's sorry for not seeing me or if she's sorry because the guy she thought was gonna be her dad wasn't what she expected. I'm so mixed up and nervous about reaching out to her. I just want to leave this hurtful past behind me. My family meant everything to me, and my daughter was my whole world. Even after all this time, it still stings and I'm still pissed off, but I know I gotta keep moving forward. It's just harder than I thought. I'm finding it tough to decide whether to reach out to Luna again. Some people are telling me to give her another chance, but all I can think about are those deceitful text messages. My usual ways of dealing with things don't seem to be working. Luna has been trying to call me, but every time I see her name on my phone, I can't bring myself to answer. The lies she told are still on my mind. She left a voicemail sounding all cheery, but her quick apology didn't feel genuine to me. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but she brought up her son and her fiancé and then asked me to call her. It's like she's making these simple requests that just rub me the wrong way. My grandma and my fiancé are telling me to give her a chance, but when I asked if Luna or Marisol ever asked about me in the 4 years I was gone, my grandma said Marisol did all the time, but not Luna. In my mind, I can't help but think that Luna only wants me around to help take care of her kid, or to use me for something. Man, these thoughts are really pissing me off. Marisol keeps blowing up my phone, and I'm tempted to change my number. Spent most of Father's Day at the gym, beating the crap out of the heavy bag. Got a meeting with an anger management group today, maybe they can help me out. If this ever gets posted by the mods, I'd love to hear your thoughts. For now, I'm trying to sort this out on my own. Shot Luna a quick email, asking what's up. Man, I didn't expect her to write such a long email. She started off by apologizing a ton for her past actions. Luna said she got mad when she found out I wasn't her dad. She talked to her mom about it, who cried and promised not to spill the beans to me. Feeling all mixed up, she started talking more to my cousin, her real dad. He spilled the beans about my shady past that I never told her about. This just made her more mad, and she started hanging out with him more and drifting away from me. Luna told me that she wanted some space from me. She said she sometimes felt guilty, but her dad kept telling her bad things about me. She then talked about the day of her quinceañera when we were dancing and she suddenly realized she was being silly. Luna saw how much I loved her and then she got some text messages from me. After the quinceañera, my wife's family told her to give me some space so she didn't reach out to me. She saw her family breaking apart because of what she did. She couldn't fix it and it really got her down. Luna said she understood why I did what I did, even though her messages said otherwise. She wanted to reach out, but her grandpa kept telling her how much I loved her and raised her, and she believed him. During the divorce, her mom was in a bad place, not talking to her, hardly eating, just going through the motions. When she found out my name was taken off her birth certificate, she had a panic attack. Her mom told her they'd. So, Luna wanted to go back to Brooklyn and asked her mom about her life and school. But her mom just said that's the life her dad gave her and is not her dad anymore. Luna called me freaking out, but I snapped at her and hung up. She cried for days, trying to reach out to my cousin who mostly ignored her. She even went to the church where he told her to leave, calling her a mistake. Her mom kept avoiding her, locking herself in her room and only coming out for bathroom and shower breaks. Luna begged her mom for help, but she wouldn't budge. Grandpa was supposed to bring her to visit me, but when they got to Long Island, they found out I had already moved. Grandpa promised to talk to Grandma to find out where I was. According to Luna, the next 2 years were tough. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about her and her mom's struggles. Her so-called dad was avoiding them and trying to dodge child support payments. Grandpa had to threaten him to make sure he started paying up. Meanwhile, her mom kept holding it down. Luna's mom gave her the cold shoulder, calling her ungrateful and blaming her for losing the love of her life. But Luna's grandpa stepped in, reminding her mom that her own cheating was the real reason for the breakup. After that, her mom went back to her room. Luna didn't spend much time at home, and that's when she met the guy who would become the father of her child. He worked at the corner store and they were the same age. After a few months of hanging out, they ended up getting pregnant. Grandpa was so pissed, but when her boyfriend said he'd marry her, it kind of chilled things out. Luna thought getting pregnant was actually a good thing. Her mom started talking to her again and even went with her to all the doctor's appointments. Being a pregnant high school senior might seem like a typical story, but Luna made it work. She graduated a month before the baby was due, and her boyfriend enlisted in the Marines. He wanted to elope before he left, but Luna wanted a real wedding. Her boyfriend didn't mind at all. Apparently, their son is named after me because his own dad was MIA in his life. Being a junior just reminded him of a man who didn't care about him. When she found out I was in town, she got a speeding ticket rushing to my grandma's place. She wanted to see me, say sorry, introduce me to her kid, and just be around me. But she was late and ended up crying. Her mom gave her my number, but she couldn't call right away because the whole neighborhood was gossiping about me showing up. Her old man passed away, so she waited. Her mom was upset to see that I had moved on and had a kid of my own. Luna was stoked to have a little bro, but her mom got even more down. I felt bad for Marisol after reading the email. I gave her a ring and asked if it was true that she didn't talk to Luna for years and blamed her for our split. She admitted it, and I initially got angry. But when I heard her sobbing, I calmed down. I told her to move on and find somebody else, but she wouldn't budge. She said I was her man, her forever man. It really got to me. So, I sent my grandma to see my cousin so I could talk to him. As soon as he heard my voice, he started bawling and asked for forgiveness. I asked him why he never stepped up as a dad to Luna, why he turned her against me. He admitted he was jealous. He had feelings for Marisol and I stole her away from him. When I got locked up, he comforted her, messed with her head, and barely even looked after her. She finally realized what was going on and she told him to get lost, but it was too late when she found out she was pregnant. They both knew it was his baby even though it was supposed to be a secret. Marisol saw her double hysterectomy as punishment from God for cheating and lying. When Luna turned 13, he was jealous of the life I had and wanted to ruin it, which he did. I told him that when we meet in hell, I'll be his eternal tormentor, and then hung up on him. Jocelyn was there for me, promising that everything would be okay. Luna and I kept in touch through. On the 4th, I had a long chat with her that went on for over an hour. She was crying most of the time. I also talked to her boyfriend, who asked for my blessing to marry her. I thought it was kind of funny but also respectful. My wedding is happening next month, and Jocelyn wants me to invite Luna at the same time. Luna, on the other hand, wants me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding in November. My future father-in-law had a heart-to-heart with me and said he didn't fully understand my situation but respected my choices. He also mentioned it. So, basically, this guy's daughter got saved somehow and now she has a great-grandson and a promising future son-in-law. I laughed at that, but he told me to let go of my anger and forgive without forgetting. He's right, so we invited Luna to my wedding and offered to pay for her plane ticket. Her boyfriend, or should I say fiancé, said he would work off the cost at my garage when they get here. I actually quite like him. As for giving her away at her wedding, I'm still not sure. I'll make that call after the wedding. Hey, just wanted to say thanks again for all the helpful advice and support in the DMS. Everyone was super nice and your help was really important to me. I'll keep you posted if anything interesting happens, but for now I gotta focus on getting ready for my wedding next month. A lot has happened real quick, and I wanna shout out all the peeps who had my back in the DMS. Sure, there were a few haters, but to them I can only say, you do you, and I'll do me. People have different ways of thinking until you go through the same thing, so don't tell me how to feel. As the wedding got closer, I was already feeling stressed. Jocelyn was so happy, and my in-laws were freaking out about all the guests coming. It felt like the whole town was showing up. Meanwhile, I was stuck in Boise waiting for Luna and her family at the airport. Before her visit, we talked a lot and she was mostly crying. I said sorry and listened a lot when she couldn't talk. Then I started chatting with her cool fiancé. When their plane landed, I got scared not because I was excited to see her again, but because I was still mad at her. I was afraid I'd lose my cool when she saw me at the airport. She ran towards me crying, and for a moment I saw my 7-year-old daughter in my head. It was a weird mix-up of images, but she ran to me screaming. Dude, so I saw this girl, right? She ran up to me and just started bawling her eyes out, like wailing so loud that everyone was staring. She kept saying sorry over and over, begging for my forgiveness. I just held onto her for like 15 minutes, and she wouldn't let go, like she was afraid I was gonna disappear as soon as she let me go. Finally, her boyfriend had to help convince her to let go. After she calmed down, he introduced himself properly and they introduced me to their kid. I gotta admit, I teared up too. Not because I was mad, but because I was so emotional holding her. So, this baby Luna looks just like her mom did at 19, which got me thinking about Marisol on the way home. We talked about her fiancé's boot camp, his military career plans, Luna's online accounting degree, and caught up on everything. When we got to my place, Jocelyn and her family had a huge spread waiting for us. Jocelyn's been learning how to cook Spanish dishes since we started hanging out, but she went all out for Luna's visit. I got the vibe that she was trying to impress Luna, and Jocelyn and Luna clicked right away. Every now and then, Luna would come over for a hug, then go back to Jocelyn. Meanwhile, I held on to my son and grandson as Jocelyn introduced Luna to her family. I put the kids to bed and went outside for some fresh air. Luna's fiancé was standing at the edge of the yard, staring at the bison wandering around. I thought about giving him the typical dad talk, but I didn't feel like it was my place. So instead, I just asked him how he was liking everything. We were looking at the view and he was totally amazed. I knew exactly how he felt, considering I've lived in the city for most of my life. Wide open spaces are truly amazing to see. After a minute or two, he turned to me and said something that I can't stop thinking about. He said, "I've been with your daughter for 3 years and she talks about you all the time. She really misses you and regrets what she did." Luna's fiancé, Roberto, is only 19 but he acts so mature. It seems like he's had a tough life to grow up so quickly. Yeah, so the next day I was able to understand that feeling. I had to run some errands at the store and Luna was super excited to come along with the baby. Roberto told her it was all good and her fun, but Luna looked like she was about to pass out from anxiety. I told her we'd only work half a day and then I'd hang out with her for the rest of the day to calm her down. It hit me how deeply traumatized Luna was. I asked Roberto about her and he explained that she was suffering from some serious stuff. He had some serious issues with abandonment, always worried he'd ditch her even though he promised he wouldn't. She'd call him a lot, kinda clingy at times. At first, she was scared to just be herself, scared they might split up. I knew I had a part in it, but he didn't blame me. He said he got why I acted the way I did. Now, let me tell you, Roberto was a terrible mechanic, didn't know a thing about cars. So, I had him come to the shop to work off the cost of it. So we shut down the store early and when we got back, Luna came running towards me looking all worried. I told her I'd be back and she went to her fiancé. When I walked into my house, Jocelyn said Luna needed to know everything was gonna be alright and that I wouldn't bail on her again. I didn't know what to say, but Jocelyn grabbed my hands and said Luna was in pain and needed her dad. So for the next few days, I spent all my time trying to bond with Luna. I took care of her. Me and Luna went to my in-laws' ranch to check out the bison and elk, and we even went on a hike just 2 days before the wedding. I felt bad and apologized to her for how I acted, but she didn't want to hear it. Luna kept saying there was nothing for me to apologize for and admitted that she felt responsible for everything falling apart. I had to stop her and started crying, telling her it wasn't her fault. I was the one who was angry and hurting, and no matter what happened, I should be the one taking the blame. Sorry, we both cried and hugged it out. Luna was feeling a bit better and actually seemed genuinely happy at my wedding. Jocelyn made her a bridesmaid and Roberto a groomsman last minute. The wedding was amazing, and at the reception, I asked the DJ to play Luna's Quinceañera song. I invited her to dance with me, and she cried the whole time, holding on to me tight. I hadn't felt this happy in a while. I let Luna and her fiancé stay at my place to take care of them. So, my little bro stayed with Luna when me and my partner went to Hawaii for our honeymoon. When we got back, Luna was so happy, giving us big hugs that felt amazing. Roberto told us he's gonna be sent to Camp Dwyer in Afghanistan and asked if Luna could hang out with us. He planned to rent an apartment nearby, which I totally agreed to right away. They just left for the city a couple days ago. It's been a crazy time, with Luna's wedding coming up in November and Roberto getting deployed soon. In December, Roberto sent me enough cash to cover a year's worth of rent for a townhouse in a community 3 miles away from my place. But Jocelyn suggested we put a double-wide mobile home on our property for Luna to live in, so she can save up to buy her own house when Roberto comes back. Marisol has been blowing up my phone with calls, and from her messages, it seems like she's not happy about Luna moving in. Right now, I'm focused on my family and fixing things with my daughter. Update, I'm just waiting for Luna to. Hey, my wife just got back from our honeymoon, so I couldn't share this post with her. Our therapist told us to be completely honest about everything, so I wanted to make sure she was cool with me sharing more about it since it involves her too. She read the post, but I didn't show her the mean comments because she got really upset. But she was okay with me posting an update. Unfortunately, my grandma passed away, so I had to put everything on hold. Let's continue where I left off. So, Jocelyn and I managed to set up a double-wide trailer on our land for Luna and Roberto. A lot of people were wondering why Jocelyn was so insistent on making things right. She just wanted to stop my anger from causing problems for our family and pushed me to find peace within myself for the sake of our family's happiness. I'm really grateful for that. Oh, and Marisol wouldn't stop calling me after Luna left New York. We finally talked and she was crying and mad about something. She accused me of snatching her kid and grandkid away. I tried to tell her I just wanted to patch things up with Luna, but she jumped right in asking about fixing things between us. I had to tell her it wasn't possible, which just made her cry more and hang up on me. Luna and Roberto liked the trailer, and Roberto wasted no time in paying me back. I told him it wasn't needed, but he insisted and I was grateful for the gesture. A few days later, Luna and I went to our first therapy session where I found out about the meds she's on for anxiety and how she's been dealing with panic attacks for a while. I can say that Luna is really sorry and has been putting up with Marisol's verbal abuse for years. Some of the things I heard were so crazy and hard to believe, but when I talked to my ex-father-in-law, he confirmed it. Marisol really messed her up emotionally and mentally, leaving my cousin with some deep scars. Despite how I feel and what I did, I know I hurt her too. It took me 2 weeks after they got here to realize that. Roberto found out he had to leave earlier for deployment, so they decided to move up their wedding date. At first, Luna wanted to wait for him to come back, but Roberto was set on getting married before he left. Jocelyn and I offered to help with the wedding costs, but Luna just asked me to walk her down the aisle and give her away. I know some people are suggesting I get a DNA test since there wasn't one from the court and the evidence is circumstantial, but I can say with certainty that it's not necessary. Luna is my daughter. So, get this, I have AB negative blood, Marisol is B positive, and my cousin is O positive. Despite all the drama, Luna is definitely my daughter. I just wish I wasn't so angry all the time. Anyways, the wedding had to be small and cozy since it was at my in-laws' ranch. The guest list included my ex-father-in-law Roberto's mom, Marisol, and my grandma. Sadly, only 2 people RSVP'd. My grandma couldn't make it because she's not feeling well, and Marisol ended up in the hospital after trying to take her own life. Luna was pissed about the news and I was mad at Marisol for thinking Luna would drop everything to come back to New York before the wedding. But then I found out I was gonna be a dad again and I was stoked. Berto struggled with breaking in a horse, but I started showing him how to fix cars and I really like the kid. The day before the wedding, my ex-father-in-law showed up with Roberto's mom, who's really sweet. Man, he gave props to her for raising a good kid. My ex's dad, he stayed all serious, but we actually talked. He said he was bummed I was leaving, but he got why. He just hoped his daughter would also move on. On the wedding day, Jocelyn was Luna's main girl, and I tried not to cry as I escorted her to the altar. Luna was just as teary during the party. We even played the same song from Luna's. Me and my daughter danced to Cinderella by Stephen Curtis Chapman at the wedding, and she held on to me tight. After the honeymoon, life was getting back to normal and I was going to write an update. But a few days before they came back, my grandma passed away. It hit me hard because she was not only my grandma, but also my mom. I never knew my real parents, just my cousin's parents. My grandma died in a car crash when I was a baby, and my mom raised us together. It was tough getting ready to go to New York for the funeral. I was trying to hold back my emotions and get ready to see my cousin. We all went to New York as a family and my grandma was buried in Cypress Hill Cemetery. During the funeral, I had my wife, daughter, and son-in-law there with me. I didn't feel mad, but I decided not to talk to my cousin at the funeral. As we were leaving, he kept trying to talk to me, almost begging. I yelled at him and he didn't like it, but ignoring him seemed to hurt him even more. A few days before going back to Idaho, Luna and I visited Marisol at the hospital. She was happy to see us, but got sad talking about missing the wedding. Everything was cool until it was time for us to leave. Marisol started crying and told the nurse she wanted to go home with her husband. She begged me to take her home, saying I was the love of her life. Man, when they took her away from her home, I couldn't help but cry. Luna was feeling it too, and it took us a while to pull ourselves together and leave the visitors' lounge. My ex-father-in-law told us that Marisol hasn't been the same since the divorce. Even though she still celebrated my birthday and our anniversary, he said he would argue with her to move on, but she just stayed stuck. He mentioned that she isolated herself and was being rude to Luna for a long time. And then there's Luna's pregnancy. The only thing that seemed to wake her up from her daze was when he pointed out that being nice to our daughter for 13 months didn't make up for the neglect and pain she caused her in 4 years. He hoped the hospital could give Marisol the help she needed. Jocelyn told me I had to forgive her so she could forgive herself eventually. As I'm writing this, things are going all right. Jocelyn and I are closer than ever. Roberto left for Saudi Arabia last week and Luna is trying to stay strong. Since he's been out of the picture, she's been acting like she doesn't need him, but it's not very convincing. She's been leaning on me and Jocelyn for support. At first, I was worried it might bother Jocelyn, but she's been loving her time with Luna and even introducing her as her daughter when they're out and about. Luna seems really happy about it. I've forgiven Marisol and I hope she can find the strength to move on. The past year has been full of ups and downs, with both joys and challenges. My family has grown. Jocelyn and I just had another baby boy and she's already talking about wanting another one. We're excited to be grandparents again since Luna is 2 months pregnant. On top of that, my son-in-law is trying to get into officer training school, so we are hoping he gets accepted. My daughter has been through a lot in her healing journey, especially during the early days of therapy. She's been doing this exposure therapy that you suggested and it's been a huge help. So, at first, this therapy made her panic attacks worse, but it's been super helpful in getting her back on track. We've both owned up to our mistakes and it's really helped us start fixing things in our relationship. My in-laws have been keeping Luna busy with ranch work, like feeding horses, giving out hay, and learning how to herd bison from my mother-in-law. It's so nice to see her so happy while she's riding a horse, and the bond between Luna and Jocelyn is just amazing. She's just the cutest. I'm so lucky to have married an incredible woman who's tough as nails. Our story started when I fixed her old man's tractors that got wrecked by her jerk of an ex. We got to know each other better and our bond grew stronger. In early May, her ex-dad kicked the bucket and I was worried Luna might go back to her old ways, but she stayed strong with Roberto by her side. Roberto has really made a huge difference in Luna's life and I can never thank him enough for all he's done. We all went to New York with him for his funeral, which was a real celebration of his life, just like his Boricua spirit. The party had a live salsa band, an open bar, and a buffet with all his favorite Puerto Rican dishes like pateles, peril, and sanu. There was a banner on his casket that said, "Do not mourn me, celebrate me," and the Puerto Rican flag was draped over it. He was dressed in his iconic vanilla ice cream suit, and everyone was happy and joyful. Marisol was there too, but she seemed out of it, lost in her own thoughts. Sometimes it seemed like Marisol's brain would just shut down, only to come back to life when Luna or I sat next to her. She'd start talking about plans for the quinceañera, but then she'd zone out again. On the second day of the viewing, her therapist pointed out that Marisol's mind seemed stuck in a happy moment from her past. The therapist thought maybe my cousin was copying Marisol and her mind was protecting her from some trauma, tricking her into thinking it was just a weak moment that messed her up. Jocelyn and I were talking and I spilled the beans about what the therapist had told me. Jocelyn was shocked and said we should tell Luna, but I was unsure. Luna had been doing so well in her healing process and I didn't want her to go backwards. So we decided to tell Roberto first. He wanted to go and have it out with my cousin, but I managed to calm him down. Eventually, we all sat down as a family and had a tough conversation with Luna. It was a really emotional and intense night. 2 days later. So, at the funeral, some shit went down. My cousin, who wasn't even invited and was drunk as hell, showed up and started causing a scene. I wanted to go off on him, but I kept my cool and just told him to get the hell out. Roberto had to hold me back because I was about to go off on him. My cousin started yelling, saying he's better than me and taking credit for my success and shit. I was so pissed, I almost went after him, but then Luna stepped in and punched him in the face. She was going crazy, screaming and crying. It was a total shit show. So, Marisol hesitated for a second. Roberto pulled her away. Then my cousin was, getting up and Jocelyn straight up punched him, knocking him out cold and hurting her finger in the process. After that, we all met up and agreed to move Marisol to a mental health facility close by, cause she doesn't really have anyone else to lean on. We are still going to therapy sessions and my daughter is, trying to deal with the idea that she might be a result of rape. It's a lot to take in, man. I was thinking about officially adopting her because she wasn't my daughter on paper anymore, but now I'm not sure if it's the right time. Hey everyone, it's been a while and I just want to thank you all. My family is getting bigger. I now have 2 grandkids, a boy and a girl, and I have 2 sons and another daughter on the way. I struggled with feeling guilty and depressed for a while after finding out about what happened during Marisol's hypnotherapy session. She said no twice at first. She was freaking out for a whole minute, begging him to stop. Then my cousin finished and bounced. She kept telling herself and the therapist that it was just a mistake, trying to convince herself. This messed me up big time, got me feeling super depressed. I started blaming myself and my cousin, replaying different scenarios in my head. It was a heavy burden, man. I even started believing what my cousin said. She messed her up. I tried to remember every time we were with family, looking for any signs or clues that something was off. I realized that whenever my cousin was around, Luna would never be in the same room with him or be alone with him. I never noticed it before, but now it's all crystal clear. Hindsight is a real B*TCH. In the months that followed, Luna and I went to therapy sessions with Marisol. Like all of you, the therapist asked what I would have done if Marisol had told the truth when I got out. Man, if my cousin had spilled the beans years later, I would have definitely gone off on him big time. I would have confronted him with no holds barred. When asked how I would have handled it if she had spilled the tea during Luna's Keenan era, I owned up that I might not have believed her at first, but I would have kept digging for the truth through questioning and investigating. I was so emotional back then, I probably would have roughed up my cousin, but I wouldn't have skipped town. I think it would have ended up. So basically, Marisol started acting way better over time. She got all emotional and apologized to both of us, saying she couldn't give me another kid, so she focused on being a better wife instead. When I left, she admitted that she always saw my cousin in our daughter, which was weird. I asked her why she let my cousin keep coming over, and she said she kinda saw him as my brother. I always looked up to him, especially when he started. A pastor who I really respected, I used to go to for advice, but in her mind, he was just a big mistake that she couldn't shake. So she did everything she could to avoid him at all costs. Luna started having panic attacks again, even worse this time, but she's managing better now. I officially adopted her as my daughter last month as a birthday present, and her happiness and tears meant everything to me. I found out that my cousin moved to Puerto Rico after getting fired from his job because he was causing too many problems for the bank. So, basically, there were some people coming into the bank, and we put a new trailer next to Luna's for Marisol. She got out in mid-March, and things were kinda weird at first. I've seen TV shows with similar situations, like having your ex and current wife hanging out together, but it's never as friendly in real life as it is on TV. Jocelyn was pretty cool about it, but she made it clear that Marisol needed to respect her boundaries. Marisol didn't want to stay on our property, though she wanted to live nearby so she could focus on being a mom. My grandma wanted us to be friends but not too close, and I respected that. Jocelyn and Marisol didn't always see eye to eye, especially when it came to raising kids and cooking. My in-laws, who like me, were uncomfortable with the whole situation. It didn't help that my brother-in-law has a thing for Marisol, to the point where Jocelyn had to smack some sense into him. Unfortunately, it didn't work. He's 2 years older than me, a widower for 2 years with 3 little girls. This guy is cool, good with horses, but has been coming around my place a lot lately just to chat with Marisol. I don't really mind, but Jocelyn does. She's super protective of her brother and worries that Marisol might not be genuine. I get where she's coming from. There was this thing on Luna's birthday, right after I gave her the adoption papers. I danced with Luna, then with Jocelyn, and when Marisol tried to dance with me after that. So basically, Roberto and Jocelyn's brother asked me out, but I said no. This made Jocelyn super jealous and she started acting possessive. On Easter, while we were watching the kids hunt for eggs, I overheard Marisol telling Jocelyn that she was jealous of her because she can have kids with me. Jocelyn told her that Luna is my daughter no matter what, and she should always remember that. Marisol started crying and it was the first time I saw them getting along. Right now, I'm just trying to keep everything in balance and hoping for the best. Healing takes time, you know. Why I know, having time, patience, and understanding is key. But having a solid support system is just as important. My wife, she's my rock. Watching her with our daughter, seeing how she's always there for her, and now supporting my ex-wife too, it's truly Amazon. Taking her to them survivor group meetings every week, it just reminds me how lucky I am. I had a real heart-to-heart with her, telling her how grateful I am for everything she's done. I made sure she knows how lucky I feel to have her by my side. And she just responded with a warm smile. She was kissing me and said I saved her too, telling me about her abusive ex and how trapped she felt. She felt like being there for me and my family was the least she could do. We were sitting together watching TV, holding each other, when I got a message from my cousin. I blocked him right away. A week later, I got a letter from him that I burned. Another week went by and my wife told me her brother is interested in asking her out. I don't really care, but I told her about Marisol. If a grown-ass person is dealing with some serious shit and knows it and is cool with taking their time, then I'm all good. The next day, I got another letter from my cousin and once again I just burned it. Usually, I'd bitch about how he keeps finding me, but I have a pretty distinct name, named after my great-grandpa, and my last name ain't common, so it's not that hard to track me down with a simple Google search. In the middle of June, we were having a bonfire and I couldn't help but smile as I watched my daughter and son-in-law slow dancing without any music. So my wife was laying on my chest and I saw my brother-in-law and Marisol making out, which actually made me happy. Then a few days later, my cousin tried to hit up Luna on Facebook and she freaked out and had a panic attack. Roberto ended up blocking him. Later that day, we were at the supermarket and my wife's ex showed up in town and had the nerve to try and talk to her. I could see the fear in her eyes and I didn't even think twice, I threw a punch. It was just one punch, but I made sure it said a lot. My wife, my rock, was shaking with fear. Man, seeing her all freaked out like that made me want to go and give him a piece of my mind, but then the sheriff stepped in and told him to scram before checking on Jocelyn. In all the time we've been together, I've never seen her so scared. While the sheriff was talking to us, I saw her ex walk by the window with this creepy grin on his face. The sheriff noticed and grabbed my arm, telling me to get Jocelyn home. On the drive back, she didn't say a word. When we got home, all she wanted was for me to hold her tight and never let go. Luna was really worried and Jocelyn seemed to be pulling away. When she came into the embrace, none of us had ever seen her like that before. I just wanted to protect her. Later that day, her brother came by and told us that he and the sheriff had paid a visit to her ex and told him to leave. But that didn't stop him. The guy showed up at my shop the next day, threatening to sue me for assault. I just smirked at him and let him know that in the 10 minutes he spent talking, I had already thought of 6 ways to make him disappear. That shut him up for the next week or so. Half of that time, he kept testing me and testing us. Jocelyn was always scared, worried that he might hurt her or me. Her brother, told him to stay away and he told his boss about it. Whenever I felt like I had to confront him, Jocelyn begged me not to. But she's my wife and I had to look out for her. I promised her I wouldn't go near him. Later, her dad spilled the beans about that guy, telling me all the awful stuff he did to her. I was shocked that he haven't talked to him in a while. He said he was thinking about it, but his knees were messed up so he skipped town. He had a big grin on his face and I couldn't help but smile back. On the 29th, we were getting ready for the Western Idaho Fair when I got another letter from my cousin. I left it on my desk this time. Marisol came up to me and asked if she could date Jocelyn's brother. I said it was cool as long as she was ready. She was like, I dunno what I really want, but I dig him and I've been thinking about him and his kids a lot. I told her I just wanted her to be happy, and she started crying happy tears. I was genuinely happy for her. Then my phone rang, and it was the sheriff telling me that Jocelyn's ex and some other dude were in the hospital with messed up faces. I was ready for some accusations, but then he said he had my son-in-law in custody. Yo, so like, mad people were backing up Roberto's story. I didn't want to chat about it on the phone, so I booked it to his office. When I got there, Luna was posted up at the front desk with a fat bruise on her left cheek. The sheriff filled me in that some witnesses saw Jocelyn's ex purposely run into Roberto and Luna as they were leaving the coffee shop. Shit got heated. Roberto tried to calm things down, then some other dude came out of nowhere and pushed Roberto. Luna wasn't having it, so she pushed him back. Jocelyn's ex is a real piece of work, man. So, Luna's ex smacked her and then Roberto ended up hurting both guys and they had to go to the hospital. The sheriff didn't press charges, but he had to tell Roberto's boss. After he got out, Roberto had to haul ass on a 13-hour drive to Yuma. Luna was feeling guilty for shoving Jocelyn's ex, while Jocelyn was trying to comfort her but also feeling guilty. Marisol unexpectedly showed up to support both of them. And then, to top it all off, a PR lady showed up the other day, standing at 6 feet tall. So, this chick comes into my shop a few months ago, asking for my name. Turns out, she's my cousin's fiancée, which totally threw me off guard. My cousin has leukemia and has been trying to reach out to me and our cousins Luna and Marisol to make amends. I told her to get lost, but she wouldn't budge. She wanted Luna and me to get tested to see if we are a match for a bone marrow donation. She started crying, saying she was scared of raising a kid without a dad. I reassured her that it would be best for the child. Then she slapped me, saying something about my cousin. He told her everything he did wrong, but she still wanted him to be involved in their kid's life. She begged me to get tested, and I had a feeling I'd be a match, knowing my luck. When I got back to work, I opened my cousin's letter expecting a plea for forgiveness and a request for me to save his life. Instead, he confessed to everything he did wrong. He talked about how he admired and loved me growing up, but things changed when I started rebelling. When I joined the Latin Kings, he started hating on me for the shit I did to our grandma, even though I tried to help him out and push him to stay in school. He thought I was full of shit because I never practiced what I preached. When I took Marisol away, that was the last straw for him. He didn't expect me to actually try and change my ways. When I got stabbed and busted, he thought it was some kind of sign from above and confessed that he couldn't resist being with her, even though she said no. In the letter, he blamed himself for losing the woman he loved. He was totally crushed, thinking he messed up his daughter and screwed over the only man who truly cared about him. He also said that if his fiancée ever visits me, she might spill the beans that he's sick. That's true, he's not well, but he doesn't want me or Luna to get tested. He's made his decision and he'll have to deal with the consequences. He ended the letter by apologizing profusely to all of us. I talked to my pastor about everything and he likened my situation to that of Job. It's kind of ironic because out of all the man, I can't stand those old biblical stories. My pastor was going on about the book of Job, saying we all go through tough times like him. Some people have it worse than others, but it's supposed to teach us to be there for others when they are struggling and how we grow as people through hard times. So this morning, I went to the hospital and let me tell you, living in a small town means everyone knows everyone's business. Without even asking, the nurse pointed me to Jocelyn's ex's hospital room. I sat there waiting for him to wake up, and when he finally did, he was totally surprised to see me. We had a chat, and well, let's just say it was an interesting encounter. Even with his jaw wired shut, he knew exactly what kind of person I would turn into if he ever messed with my family again. I had forgotten how quickly I could become so dark. Right now, I'm sitting in the cancer ward, typing this long rant on my phone, debating whether I should get tested to see if I'm a match. Why do we always have to go through tests and face constant challenges? Why are there always people trying to ruin everything? Update: I got tested and found out 2 days ago that I am a match. That's all. Thinking about giving him a hand, but I'll never forget what he did and I'll hold a grudge against him forever. But man, his pregnant fiancée from Puerto Rico came begging me for help. Talked it over with my family. Luna and Marisol wanted him to suffer, but they said it was up to me. Jocelyn said she couldn't understand where my head was at, but she'd back me up no matter what decision I make.